The DoD budget for fiscal year 14 came out in April of 2013, and the OCO, the Overseas Contingency Operations, came out in May of 2014. Let me first discuss the top line budget for the DoD budget. The top line for fiscal year 14 is $606.1 billion, and that includes a base budget of $526.6 billion and an OCO, Overseas Contingency Operations, budget of $79.4 billion. That's a decrease of $8.7 billion from fiscal year 13. Now, the base budget, as it goes out in time from fiscal year 14 to fiscal year 18, is a CAGR of about 1.5%. Therefore, it steadily increases. However, the Overseas Contingency Operations CAGR, 5-year CAGR, is minus 15.4%. So certainly the OCO portion is going down. Overall, at the top line level, the general decline is a negative 0.3% from fiscal year 14 through fiscal year 18. As I said before, the DoD budget comes in two flavors: the base budget and the OCO portion of the DoD budget. There is a ratio between the two. If you look at fiscal year 01 through fiscal year 13, over 13 years, the entire area under the curve, or the entire budget, equals $7.15 trillion. The OCO portion of that is $1.42 trillion over those same 13 years. So the ratio is about 19.8% of the DoD budget is OCO. The highest year of OCO was fiscal year 8 at $187 billion. In fiscal year 14, the President has requested an amount equal to $79.4 billion. So you can see that with the drawdown in Afghanistan, the OCO portion is going down. So we're on a negative CAGR percent with the OCO. Sequestration came in effect by the Budget Control Act of 2011. The DoD budget has been going up since 9/11, since fiscal year 01, all the way through fiscal year 13. So we have seen that rise. However, in fiscal year 12, the FYDP, the Future Years Defense Plan, was submitted. And when that was submitted, between then and fiscal year 13 FYDP, there was a $487 billion reduction that is attributable to the Budget Control Act of 2011. So that was the first major cut, $487 billion. Then when the fiscal year 14 FYDP was submitted by the President, it went down by another $90 billion. So the total effect is the 487 plus another $90 billion. Now, sequestration came in for the first time in fiscal year 13. In fiscal year 13, the budget cut was $37 billion. We are now awaiting the results of the Congress and the administration to figure out what we're going to do with the sequestration for fiscal year 14. Potentially, it is a $52 billion reduction due to that sequestration. Now, we don't know how many more sequestrations will be coming down the line. The public law actually states there are 9 of them. So apparently, if all 9 of the sequestrations are implemented, then the total reduction since fiscal year 12 will be about $1 trillion over 10 years. So that is a very significant number, $1 trillion. It's a reduction of approximately 18% over that 10 years. Each year the budget comes out and it's distributed, allocated to the 4 services and defense-wide. So you have the Army, the Navy, which includes the United States Marine Corps, the Air Force, and defense-wide, which represents all 17 defense agencies. So the DoD budget of $606 billion is allocated proportionally. Roughly the percent of allocation would be for the Army about 29%, for the Navy and Marine Corps 27.5%, for the Air Force 26%, and about 17.3% for defense-wide. When you do that, when you do the math by 6 times $606.1 billion, you have the actual amounts that are allocated to each of the 4 services. Given the President's budget request was $606 billion, but there is a potential $52 billion sequestration for fiscal year 14, if you apply that to the 606.1, you're going to end up around $554 billion. Now that will be divided into the various appropriations. The appropriations are basically military personnel, operations and maintenance, procurement, research, development, test and evaluation, and other. So the result, the $554 billion, is divided among those appropriations. Now, the reduction will be approximately 10 to 12% for the O&M and about 13 to 16% range for the procurement and RDT&E. The O&M will be the biggest portion of the budget at about $245 billion. Military personnel will be about $146 billion. That's the second biggest. And then procurement will come in around $92 billion and RDT&E about $58 billion. So if you look at those numbers and then if you make some assumptions, the assumptions I'll make are 70% of the RDT&E will be go to defense contractors. 92% will go of the procurement will go to defense contractors, and about 25% of operations and maintenance will go to defense contractors. If you make those three assumptions, then and you multiply and you do the math times the remaining $554 billion, then there will be about $186 billion that would be available to the defense contracting industry through the procurement, RDT&E, and the O&M budget appropriations. The DoD budget of $606.1 billion has about $167.6 billion of modernization funds. That would be the sum of procurement and research, development, test, and evaluation. The way the services divide that up is in mission categories. The biggest three are platforms. So the first one would be aircraft. All four services operate fixed-wing, helicopter, UAV, and tilt-rotor aircraft. The sum of procurement RDT&E for aircraft is about $45 billion. Moving to the next category of shipbuilding and maritime systems, about $23.3 billion will be spent for the Navy and Marine Corps' ships and maritime systems. The last of the platforms is ground vehicles. About $9 billion of ground vehicles will be procured as platform funds in DoD. After you have the platform funding, which equals about 45% of the DoD budget, then you have other categories which buy weapons and mission systems such as electronics, sonars, radars, communications, etc. So for the missiles and munitions, it's about $9 billion. For the Missile Defense Agency to provide missile defense to DoD, it's about $8 billion. For space-based systems, for satellites and things like that the Air Force controls, it's another $8 billion. And then all services have C4I systems, and that's about $7 billion. So that's procurement for all of those systems, platforms and sensors. In addition to that, in the RDT&E world, you have about $12 billion of what we call 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3 science and technology RDT&E. That's about $12 billion in fiscal year 14. The remaining amount of RDT&E is for all the mission support and mission systems and sensors, and that equals about $45 billion. When you add all that up, it's $606.1 billion before sequestration. Given the fact that we're in the second year of a continuing resolution since fiscal year 13, and given the fact that we already have done the fiscal year 13 sequestration, we now enter fiscal year 14 starting on 1 October. There are a lot of defense issues that come about because of this. So what I'll do is discuss a number of those issues. The first issue is the depth and speed of the build down. Since we are in a build down since getting out of Iraq and winding down from Afghanistan, we don't know exactly what the bottom will be. Right now, the lowest year is fiscal year 15, but the true depth and speed of that build down is still an uncertainty. The second item is the effect of the sequester from fiscal year 13. That was $37 billion. Now, The O&M effect basically has taken place with defense furloughs of the DoD civilians and a lot of the readiness and training going down considerably. But we don't know what the true impact of the procurement is, because that will take 2 or 3 years to take place. The next item is furloughs of DoD civilians. The DoD civilians were furloughed for 6 days in fiscal year 13. We don't know what the true impact of the furloughs or the reduction in force will be in fiscal year 14, depending upon the amount of the cut. But that certainly is an uncertainty and a worry, because those civilians obviously do a lot of the administration and contracting in the DoD. The next one is the sufficiency of the top line for fiscal year 14. Since we're still at war in Afghanistan, will the OCO budget, the Overseas Contingency Operations budget, be sufficient to get all the men and material back to the United States? So that's a question mark, because Afghanistan is on the other side of the world from the United States. The last one is the OCO funding itself. Is it in the right colors of money? That is O&M versus procurement versus R&D. O&M is the lion's share, or about 80% of OCO, and so we're not quite sure that we've nailed the number at 79.4. The next one is duration of the continuing resolution. The continuing resolution for 14 is still being hammered out. We don't know what the duration is going to be. Will it be 1 month? Will it be 4 months? Will it be 6 months? Obviously, the longer the continuing resolution is in effect, the worse or the more detrimental it is to the resources for fiscal year 14. Next item is BRAC, the base realignment and closure. The DoD would like another round of BRAC for fiscal year 15. Obviously, this is not popular with Congress, because a BRAC means a loss of jobs in their districts. Okay, so each of the congressmen are generally against BRAC, but obviously DoD needs it in order to cut the tail. I mean, the tip is the tip of the spear of the warfighters, but the tail, the logistics, and the shore community, we don't need quite as much. So that's why DoD would like another round of BRAC. The second last point is the pivot to Asia Pacific. The strategy outlined by the President in January of 2012 called for a pivot of DoD resources to the Asia Pacific. Is the funding that is in fiscal year 14 through 18 sufficient to solve or to fund that pivot? And the last one is supporting the defense guidance. Every year there's a strategy and a defense guidance issued to all 4 services. Are the funds that are in place or will be in place even after the sequester, are they sufficient for the services to accomplish their missions? And that is a question, and again, another point of uncertainty.